So thanks for coming out, first of all,
No worries.
all the way from Singapore. And when we talked about what you wanted to talk about, I love the title of Asia is Not a Country. So I'll let you take it away. But everybody, Robbie Hills from Google.
I'm going to stand up here because I'm a short guy. It's like Drew's got a bit of height on me, so I'm going to stand up here. When Drew asked me to speak, it was like, okay, Robbie, what am I going to speak about? And I was starting to think about it. And literally a couple of days later, I was having a conversation with someone from outside of our region. And they go, Robbie, we're really keen to get our business into Indonesia. And I said, okay, well, that's interesting. And, Indonesia is an up-and-coming country. A couple 100 million people live in Indonesia. It's Facebook's biggest market outside of the United States. It's a huge Twitter country, a huge amount of people using Twitter in Indonesia. And he goes, yeah, and that's a lot of the reasons we're thinking about. And I said, I've always wanted to go to Mumbai. And I sort of stopped. I said, what did you just say? And I went, okay, but Mumbai's in India. Right, okay, so we had a bit of a conversation around that for a little while. And it just sort of got me thinking, and it's like, and I think this is an exception. I think this was, a little bit outside of it, but it got me thinking, is when people start thinking about Asia Pacific or Asia, they don't really, I think, understand a lot of the nuances that you need to think about when doing business in Asia. So I came up with this topic, Asia is not a country, discussed, sort of, reflecting back on those days when you did high school essays or got a subject. So I'm just going to spend 10 minutes talking about the differences in Asia, some of the things that you might need to think about if you're thinking about bringing your business to Asia, if you're already in Asia, or there's particular countries that you might be interested in, because it's not just about opening up, putting up a shingle and saying, hey, I'm here. So just a few things. By no means is it a definitive list. It's just a couple of things that sort of popped into my head. Okay, so when we think of Asia Pacific, this is generally the region, the countries that sort of fall into play. So, it's a pretty big region, a lot of different countries, and a lot of different elements to it. However, one of the really interesting things is that, I stole all these slides from, the font of all knowledge, Wikipedia, but there's more people living in this circle in the world than there is outside of it. So just think about that. So if we go back to that map, there's more people here living in this circle than there is outside of it. That's a lot of people. Obviously, China and India make up a big chunk of that, but you need to start thinking about that when you're wanting to market your products or bring your businesses to this particular region. Okay. So, language, universal to everyone. What do we need to do when we think about it? Well, there's a lot of different languages, not just the spoken language, but the written language. So when you think about the businesses that you're bringing, and for most people, English is not a first language. So, you need to make sure, how am I going to tailor my content in a language that can be understood for, most of the world? So, traditional Chinese is one language. Japanese, Vietnamese, Korean, Thai, English, obviously. I'm Australian, we speak English, but that's about the only country where English is the first language in Asia Pacific. Bahasa, Malay Bahasa, Indonesian Bahasa, Tagalog. Anyone know what country Tagalog is from? Excellent. So, Hindi. Hindi is, officially the national language of India, but in India it's actually not really spoken. There's about 50 different languages that are spoken within India itself. So, and it's made up of multiple states. Most people think India is obviously a country; it's a democracy, but in reality, it's a bunch of different countries living in one global set of borders. Mandarin, simplified Chinese, in terms of the way it's produced on a website. So these are just, some of the languages that exist in Asia Pacific, not to mention things like Urdu, Kerala, it's just a whole bunch of them. But these are the main ones that we focus on when trying to, do business in Asia Pacific. So how does your business going to cope with that? This is a big one, currencies. In most parts of the world, it's the US dollar here. In Europe, there's two that you have to deal with. So, how do I do my business? How do I invoice? How do I bill? How do I think about tax? All of these are really important issues. But in Asia Pacific, we don't have that luxury. We have ringgit, Malaysia, dong, Vietnam, a peso in the Philippines, rupiah, yen, baht, RMB, yuan, dollar in a couple of different countries, rupee, or the won. All of these currencies we have to bill in, invoice customers in. So if you're going to start doing business in any of these countries that we talked about before, how are you going to cope with that? How are you going to do that? How are your systems built and set up to manage that? What about the currency, the forex risks between them? All of these things you need to think about when coming to Asia Pacific. This is the things that you don't talk about at, you guys got Thanksgiving coming up. For us, it's, Christmas dinner. You never talk about religion and politics and family, right? But, in Asia Pacific, we have a range of different religions and different political systems that you have to think about when doing business in a particular set of countries. We have dictatorships, we have communism, and it's working very well. We have military juntas. Some of them are falling apart now, but they still exist, and still have to do business in these countries. We have democracies. We have constitutional monarchies. Thailand, is ruled by the king, and there's lots of laws that exist in Thailand where that if you don't follow them, you're carted off to jail. There's a law called lèse majesté, which basically means you can't bring the king or the royal family's name into disrepute. So we haven't launched YouTube there for that particular reason, because it's really hard to manage. Religion, Shinto in Japan, Buddhism, Islam, two biggest Islamic countries, Malaysia and Indonesia, Christianity, Hinduism. All of these religions, and there's a whole lot more, all exist. So culturally, you need to be aware about what you're doing with your business in these particular countries. How are you tailoring your content for those particular countries? How are you tailoring your advertising or in a digital manner to those particular countries or religions? Population. When we talked about the population at the start before, but it depends what stats. These are from ComScore, but millions of people online. Just a couple of different stats. There's 16 million people online in Vietnam. 74% of Thai and Vietnamese online audience are under 35. It's a young, mobile population. We talked about the audience in APAC before. These are some of the stats just to give you a view of people actually online in Asia Pacific. 1.3 billion people in China are online, and it's growing every day. 1.2 in India, 247 million in Indonesia, Philippines. These are the 4 biggest markets in Asia Pacific in terms of online population. So how are you tailoring your content? How are you tailoring your messages in those particular markets? Culture. So, let's go back a sec. I've stolen these slides from a German Chinese lady who did it many years ago, and to me still encapsulate what is some of the differences between a Western audience and generally an Asian audience. So, punctuality in many countries say if you go to India or in China, traffic is really bad, like really bad. To get to meetings in India, in Delhi, you normally have one meeting in the morning and one meeting in the afternoon. That's your day, because the rest of it spent 6 hours in taxis going between meetings. You can't do any others. It's just not physically possible. So punctuality becomes this thing. Like if someone was late to your meeting here in San Francisco or New York, you're going to get pissed off if they're 5 minutes late. Looking at your watch, this guy, I'm not taking this meeting now. He's late. In Delhi or in Beijing, you ring up and say, mate, I'm 20 minutes late. It's okay, whatever, no worries. Expressing anger, or when you're doing a business negotiation. Generally in a Western view, you're going to sit there and say, you're going to show your feelings, right? You're going to show what you're feeling. No, absolutely no way. That deal's not going through, and you're going to show. In Asia, in many cultures, you're going to sit there and they're going, yeah, no worries, the deal's done. And inside they're saying, there's no fucking chance. And, this stuff is a reality when you're doing business in Asia. Expressing opinion, I love this one. It's like, you're going to be always very direct, right? You're going to say, hey, this is what I'm feeling, and the person on the other side of the table is going to know it. I've had lots of conversations or lots of business meetings where it's taken 3 or 4 meetings to actually get to resolved in terms of the answer that we're wanting. So roundabout ways of getting there. You know, working at Google, working at many US companies, you know, we're all equal. It's all about, you know, empowering the individual, and that's great. And, you know, I believe in it. But, you know, in many Asian countries, you know, the boss is the boss. You know, I know it's ridiculous, but some of my guys who worked for me in India for many years still call me the boss. It's you know, the boss is held in very high regard, very high esteem. So you need to understand how to deal with that and, you know, embrace it. This is my favourite one. It's like, you know, I'm Australian, so I call it queuing. Let's call it lining up. It's a line. You know, you get there's always a line, and I love the reference before. You know, someone sitting up there and standing up there and looking at something. I think you can do the same thing in Asia. If you went and stood at a door in Asia, before you'd be waiting for about 5 minutes and there'd be 50 people behind you, or trying to cram in. What's he looking at? But this is what happens. People trying to get through the door. Okay, so I've just got a couple more slides and just sort of stolen the concept here, just to give you a sense of some of the scale. You know, total US mobile subscribers, 345 million. China mobile subscribers, 1.2 billion. You know, search in the West, you know, generally is Google, Bing, Yahoo. We're all familiar with these brands. You know, the biggest search engines in Asia actually aren't Google, funnily enough. Baidu's, you know, the number one search engine by a long way in China. Naver's the number one search engine in Korea. Yahoo Japan, you know, it's probably about 50-50 now in Japan, but with us and Yahoo Japan. But there's a difference. So how are you tailoring your business to these search engines? Black Friday coming up very soon. Last year did about $1 billion in online sales. Big number. A couple of weeks ago, it's a similar event in China. It's called the Singles Day. 11th of the 11th, I think it is. 5.75 billion on Alibaba alone. One day. That is a big number. And it's only going to get bigger. So thank you very much. I just want to give you a sense of, that's about my 10 minutes, of the differences that are in Asia. You know, it's not something to be afraid of, it's not something to be scared of, but it's something to embrace. But you need to come in with your eyes wide open, and you need to think about what you need to do to build your business in Asia. Thanks.